Good afternoon on a beautiful Tuesday. I know it's not, I can see it from my window out here. Amazing weather. I need to go out, get some fresh air. Um, but it's a good day today in terms of quite a few sessions, actually, two. And one of them starts now with Amara Property, who is a North London based property developer. So I am going to connect them in. Hello,
Hello, hi there.
how are you?
Well, thank you. How are you doing today?
Good, good. All is well. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us on today.
Not at all. It's a pleasure, in terms of speaking to property developers. It's always a good thing because a lot of people in the market who are sort of if and when should I get into property development, a
Hmm.
lot of people have those questions in their mind right now, especially because of how the market is going, so it's always good to learn from developers who are already in this, who are already doing this on a large scale, on a small scale, whatever they're doing. Everyone's got their own um, problems that they're facing within the property development world.
Hmm.
So, it's good to share that knowledge. So, thank you so much for coming on. Rutu, before I start, if you can introduce yourself as to who you are and what you do, and then we can get the conversation going.
Yes, sure. Amara Property is, I would say, a very high quality developer. We're been building homes mainly around Northwest London for almost 10 years now. So we
Wow.
started in the last recession. So we've had some experience with regards to the ups and downs that the market has taken. But yeah, in essence, we pride ourselves in building very high quality family homes. We have a dedicated team. We have a full life cycle with the way that we do build our homes. So we do all the
Okay.
planning in house. So we have design control from the beginning. We also do all of our construction in house. So we have a very good quality with regards to what we're delivering. And
Okay.
we're able to price that quite well because the control is there.
Okay.
And then, of course, we also sell and we do work with partners when it comes to that. So we like to work with the full life cycle of property development, and that's something that we have done since the beginning.
So that's basically acquiring the plot to finishing off the sale. It's all
Exactly.
within Amara Property.
Yes, it's all in house. Yeah.
Before I get going, I mean, I just wanted to know, did you always think about that this is what I'm going to do? Like when you were at school, college, university, did you always think that property development is the way forward, or no, you were doing something totally different at that point, got into your career, and then thought that, okay, now it's time to do the property development. So if you can just take me through that sort of,
Sure.
I'm taking
Uh,
you a bit back into memory lane.
yeah.
So,
No, it's definitely not what I always wanted to do. But what I did always want to do was I always wanted to be a business owner.
okay,
I kind of wanted to be, the boss of my own destiny, if that makes sense.
entrepreneur.
So yeah, and I think that was
Yep.
always key, and that's something I always wanted to do. Um, but property development almost, I would say, fell on my lap. I think when you are an entrepreneur, you're looking for opportunities and you're happy to, dive into them a little bit, no matter what outcome you may get from it. So it started off, with the site coming to us, and got involved with
But
it. It was in
before
the
that site
recession.
came to you, what were you doing? I mean, in
Um,
terms of business,
yeah,
in terms of, I mean, what did you graduate in?
finance mainly.
Okay.
So I guess quite
So
flexible
crunching numbers was easy, you know.
and fun.
Although I see the other part of it. The
Yeah.
only time I look at finances is when I'm checking my bank account or speaking to the accountant or crunching the numbers on the calculator. That's it.
Yeah.
But
So finance was my background. I
okay.
did bank. I was working in banking before I started property development.
Investment banking?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, investment
cool.
banking. Um, but yeah, I think it was just getting an opportunity really and kind of going with it. And I think, it's interesting when there is a downturn in the economy, it almost opens the doors up to the smaller players because the larger players tend to be on pause as they are right now,
Yep.
or slowing down on some level. But
Yep.
there is some market adjustment that happens.
It's always the case, right? That
Hmm.
in these kind of times, opportunity, it's how you find the opportunity. I
Yeah.
mean, just before you came on, I was speaking to another developer in Hastings, and he was like, a lot of agents are complaining about the market being slow and this and that. I'm like, yes, it is, but then you find something else, do something else, make the market come to you and see what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. I
that's the
mean, the
sort of.
market is on pause right now, and
Yep.
for reasons obvious, for obvious reasons. But
Yep.
what we have seen, a lot of the agents that we work with are telling us is they're finding a huge amount of inquiries now suddenly coming in. So it shows that people are home, but they haven't forgotten about property or their next move.
Exactly.
They are looking on their computers and almost planning the life after lockdown.
Yep.
And
I mean,
agents are trying to
people
catch
have
and
so
stop.
much time. People have so much time right
Hmm.
now.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially
and the
the.
thing
Yep.
with properties, it's a demand that's always going to be there. I mean, we need homes to live in.
Yep.
Um, yes, how we deliver them, how we adjust the ways that we work to be more in keeping with the market right now are things that I think all business owners are doing in every industry.
Yep.
But property specific, yeah, we're going to have changes, and changes means there will be new opportunities. It also means there will be adjustments that will need to be made throughout the board. But all in all, if transaction values do come down this year, we still will see that there's a latent demand. And so as the property market picks up again, we still
Yep.
always have in the UK a shortage of housing, and that's helped us
Absolutely.
maintain our prices.
Yep.
So I think we'll see that going forward as well.
Um, you mentioned about investment banking.
Hmm.
How, I mean, you said that you started property development 10 years ago, which was recession. So I'm guessing that you were in investment banking before the
Hmm.
property development side. How was investment banking at that point in like the early 2000s to possibly what it is right now? How is it different to, I mean, do you know much about the investment banking market right now? Although you're a full-time property developer, can you just
Yeah,
give
I
me a
think it
quick?
depends again what sector of investment banking you're in. I think right now we're seeing a different sector taking up. It's mainly tech.
Yep.
Tech is what's happening right now. It's kind of
Yep.
proven that it is recession proof, and tech companies can make money no matter how the market.
Yep.
In the last recession, we probably saw less of a tech uptake, um, and again, it was probably down to an investment bank, depending on what deal sectors were happening at that time.
And
So
at that
investment
time, what
banking
were
is,
the, yeah,
sorry.
sorry, I was just asking, like, before you mentioned that there wasn't much tech. So what were the investment banking dealings like? What were they mainly looking at?
I would say it was probably a bit more on the manufacturing side.
Okay.
I was working in a very specific team, so I was in an Africa-based team.
Okay.
Again, now within Africa, they were doing a lot more of kind of manufacturing sort of deals.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, we are going to see a change. I mean, IT is happening now.
Yep. A
Um,
lot of a lot of AI. I mean, I was speaking
yeah.
to another alternative investment broker, and they were talking about um, banks actually investing money in pure water,
Hmm.
clean water. I was like, wow, seriously, people do that kind of stuff? It's like crazy. I
The
mean,
shortage of water. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
banks picking up on that and investing money in there, and but it's like, sometimes you think about, okay, opportunities landing on your doorstep in the right way that you can understand, but then something like water, why
I
would
think
I
it
invest?
depends on what time frame of investment they're looking at. Like a water play, I would say is a pretty long-term
I
investment
mean,
strategy.
yeah,
Looking at something today, I think right now, what we're going to see affected is a short-term strategy. The
yeah,
long-term fundamentals are still there in the market.
yeah.
It's the short-term adjustments that are happening right now.
Um, so then when you sort of got over the investment banking and when it came to the recession, what sort of opportunity did you see at that point that, okay, now is the time for me to get into property development?
Yeah, I think the
What?
last recession, the key driver was the lack of credit in the market.
Okay.
So there really wasn't much cash floating around. And because of that, there were opportunities to be had just simply because of lack of credit in the market.
Okay.
I think that was probably the main driver. So you were able to find sites that were well priced, and if you're buying well, end of the day, you have a very good contingency along the process of that development.
So you bought your first site cash. Is that what
Yes,
you said?
yeah,
Total,
we had
like
to.
100%.
So the
And
difficulty on
that's
that,
where you struck the deal?
yeah, and the difficulty there, for example, was being a newcomer with no official track record. It was very difficult to raise finance.
Yep.
So the number of new entries, you could say, were limited. And I think we right now it's not as similar because the banks have, have done the correct gearing this time round. They put in, the correct stress tests that they were doing post credit crunch, that they're in a stronger position. They've also
Okay.
been almost working with the government to almost, the government is almost telling them you need to not stop lending.
Yep.
Continue lending. Yes, you may need to amend your lending criteria, but continue lending. I think that's going to show us a very different
Side to what it
recovery
was. Yep.
this time
Yep.
than we did last time.
Yep.
And we'll have a quicker recovery, I think, because of that.
I mean, the amount of loans that are going out, especially with all this bounce back and
Yeah,
the business loans, the easier, possibly because the banks are now feeling that the government's backing them. In 2008, it wasn't possibly the case that the governments were backing banks when, for
Well, the banks
example,
were the bad guys, weren't they, last time?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like for example, Northern Rock, I was speaking to a broker and they were saying like Northern Rock was giving out 120% mortgages on properties. I'm like, wow. So 20% cash back for free.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
that's what caused this whole fiasco in the market at that point. But this time round, it's not the banks that are causing it. It's the health sector that has
Exactly.
sort of
At the end of the day, it shows us that there's nothing that's fundamentally gone wrong with the market, which is why we're here today.
Yeah.
And that means that it's in a way, it's easier to recover from that because the fundamentals remain. Yes,
Absolutely.
we're looking at reduced demand, we're looking at slowdown this year, paused economic activity. It's different issues, but the issues I would say are less of a broader reach with regards to contagion that we saw last time.
Now, you mentioned about your first property deal that you went in with all cash, and it was your cash that you raised, and you invested that fund into the property deal. What was it that you bought?
So we bought a pub. It was a derelict pub that had planning permission to be
knocked down
extended
and
into a much larger restaurant.
Okay.
Great location on the high street. Problem with the planning was they had a 100-seat restaurant with no parking. So it was difficult to shift that. But when looking at the site, we found that the easy way out was to just convert it into apartments. And there was enough parking for that. So we converted the
restaurant
into because they already had permission for an extension. So we had a new size as a precedent to work with, and we converted that size into 3 apartments.
And was it easy? I mean, why did you go ahead and buy something with planning and not choose something that did not have planning? Sorry, I'm asking these questions because there are people out there that don't know whether to go to, will I make more money with something that has got planning, or will I make more money with something that has not got planning? So this is why I'm asking this question.
A simple rule of thumb, normally the more value you add, the more you will make. Therefore, if a site doesn't have planning, you are adding more value to that site.
Yeah.
That also means having that skill set to be able to do planning, to understand planning law, work with a different consultant. It is, I would say, a topic of its own. So the first time round, I think to have something that had a precedent of planning, yes, we changed the planning, we went to planning, but we had precedent, made the process easier because the first time was a huge learning curve.
Okay.
Just to see how the planning system works, how different consultants have inputs, how architects work. I mean, if you've not done this stuff before, a lot of it I would say is common sense, but there is a learning curve. So
absolutely.
maybe on the first one,
you're
not to be too advanced.
Exactly. If you're not doing it and you're coming into this as a newbie kind of thing, then it's always best to learn from other people like you
Yeah.
said, consultants, planning
Yeah.
consultants, architects, all these people, because
Yeah, you
they
need
will,
them anyway. You're going to
yeah,
need them anyway. I mean, everyone is so specialized in planning and planning laws that you will have to use consultants. I mean, I've done sites now where we may have like 15 consultants for the
wow.
planning application. So, and the larger sites have even more. And so there's an element of know-how that needs to go into that. I mean, we're so lucky today
I
that
mean, you must
we
be
have
not
so
doing
much
9 to 5.
information online.
You must be doing like 6 to 11, something like that, with
Yeah, the
15
hours are
consultants.
very long. Yeah, at the
Um,
moment. But I mean,
yeah,
any new business I think requires that kind of dedication.
it's your baby, right? You got to
It
look
is a
after
baby,
it.
yeah.
You
You got to
you got
grow
to
it, nurture it.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, what were the hardships? I mean, property development, a lot of people say is easy. You get the land, you get the planning, you build
Mhm.
it, you sell it, but it's not that easy, I think. I mean, I was
No.
doing my house as well when I was doing the extension and stuff. And little did we know that there was like so much water in the ground that we
Yeah.
had to, like, when we were refurbishing the house, there was dead wiring at the back of the walls that we had to take out and
Hmm.
rewire and all that. So you don't
Yeah.
really see these things when you're seeing the structure. You're like, yeah, perfect. I can go in, I
Yeah.
can do this and all of that. But then when you knock it down, or you've
Yeah.
just started refurbishing, all these things come up. So what were the hardships that you faced? Although you were dealing with consultants, and that sort of in your first property development held you back totally for like quite a big period of time within that development. If you can just elaborate on that.
You cut up a little bit. Are you referring to the first development that we did?
First development that you did,
Okay.
what were the hardships that you faced?
I
Real
think
hardships.
I think on a first of anything, you can say, is hard. I would say every step was a learning curve, and I think that was it. We had, at least for myself,
Yep.
but I was eager to learn at that point. I think when you are starting a new business, your mindset is very open, should be very open.
Yep.
And so I think every step was new challenge. So planning had its challenges. The first time, for example, we went into planning, our application got rejected.
Oh,
So understanding why that happened, um, how we can amend, what kind of communication we need to do with the counselors, etc. Then getting on site, how to get a main contractor on board, how to make sure that they're subcontracting correctly, what kind of management has to go into place, monitoring that you need to do with the main contractor, payment terms. I think everything is new, but I guess a point I was trying to make earlier was we're so lucky today that we live in an information age. We can type anything
yeah.
onto Google now
Google.
and we
Yep.
can find out.
Yeah.
We just need to take the time to do that. And I also think not just limiting yourself to online, but
Yeah.
talking to people. And I think you're doing this now, and you probably found that the amount of things you learn just by talking to
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely. I mean, the
Um,
thousands of things that I have sort of
yeah,
taken in, like, I would be like, seriously, had I done this earlier, I would be at another stage today. But everything at its own time,
yeah,
I mean, things like learning about properties up in the US,
hmm,
all that kind of stuff, like the
yeah,
information that's out there. And this is the whole point of doing this, right? That anyone can come and look at this video right now, or in 24 hours, or it stays on my profile. They can come and look at it. They want to
yeah,
know about property development. Come and look at this live show. And this will teach you so much about a real story, a real
hmm,
property developer story who's gone through that, learn from those
yeah.
mistakes, learn how they have gone on speaking to
But
contractors, speaking. Yeah,
I was
sorry.
just going to say that's with everything, I think, that process of making mistakes, learning from them, utilizing that lesson and moving on. And I think if you do that in any industry, not just
Yep,
property, any industry that you're in, you will
yep,
always become better at what you do. And that's what we call
absolutely,
experience, end of the day.
absolutely. I mean,
So,
if you had come on my first live session, you'd be like, "What the hell?" But now it's like
now you're
it's been.
pro.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm pro. There are better people out there who are doing this on a proper pro level. But the point is that the questions, the conversation that I can have with people like yourself right now are
Yeah,
different to what maybe I would have on my first live session. So
yeah,
it's a, like you mentioned, everything's a learning curve. You
it
learn,
is.
when you make conversation with people, you learn how to speak to people, how to discuss certain things. You know, you can't discuss the same thing with a seasoned property investor, the same thing you could
Yeah,
discuss with a property developer. You
exactly.
know, they're looking at two different aspects. So you did your first development that you did, and then how was it going into number two, number three, number four, and today at where you are? Uh, was it an easy process? Yes, okay, now we've done this, we've learned our stuff. Let's go and buy two, three more different sites
Hmm.
and see how we do. Was that the case, or no, you went one at a time?
The process definitely got easier. There were times where we had multiple sites, sometimes we just had one, it just varied. But I still think the learning hasn't stopped, and I hope will never stop. I hope that element continues forever because that just means that, at least for myself, I'm getting a bit more educated or better at what I'm doing. So learning doesn't stop. But I think the process gets easier because once you repeat a process, it becomes a little bit more natural.
Yep.
Um, and then you start finding new challenges. So for us, it's been the business grew, for example. So we were
Okay.
scaling the same process,
Yep.
building something that's one house to multiple houses is maybe the same process, but now you're scaling up. So there's always that kind of challenge. And I think that's what keeps it exciting.
I mean, you mentioned that learning on every step.
Hmm. Yeah.
Is that according to the developments that you have, that you're doing, or no? Within that same property development
Hmm.
sector, you're learning different stuff on each and every development that you're doing.
Exactly, the second one, because we are quite niche in what we do. We
Okay.
only do new build residential.
Yep.
So we're not doing conversions, we're not doing commercial. It's very, very specific. And even in that specific niche, I feel we're learning every day because we're
Yep.
improving our systems. So we're trying and testing, as you do.
Yep.
Some things work, some processes can be improved, some are horrendous, and we need
Yep.
to ditch them. So you're always kind of making these amendments along the way. Uh, and I think that's just process. It's part of the process.
Um, so how many developments have you done so far, Rutu, in your
Gosh,
time at Amara Properties?
we've probably done on, maybe about 10, 12 so far.
Not bad. So development, point one development every year, kind of, you know.
But because we
Yeah.
do the full life cycles, we tend to
Yep.
have multiple ones in a different phase. So
I
we
mean,
may have
I've
something in
been,
planning, something in
yeah.
construction, something in sale phase.
Okay.
But yeah, I think over time, the aim really is to ramp up. We do have the skill set now. So
And then
again, same
are you
skill set,
planning
take it to
to
the next level.
taking on developments where you do maybe 10 residential homes, 20 residential homes, or
Hmm.
you're keeping it to 1 to 5 kind of units? How are
No,
you?
definitely upping the numbers, looking at schemes that I guess again because the capacity now is there, the know-how is a little bit more there, so we can easily accommodate larger projects. So that's
And
definitely
have
the next
you
phase.
started looking at outside London, sort of? I mean, not outside London. I mean, you specialize in North and
Hmm.
Northwest. So on that part of North and
Hmm.
Northwest, are you looking outside as well, or no, you're just sticking to the boundaries of North and Northwest London at the
No,
moment?
we are a little bit, and
Okay.
one of the key reasons is a lot of the research coming out now with the changes in buyers' expectations is that there's an increase in demand for rural living. Because people are now able and will be able to work more from home, have the
Yep.
flexibility of
Yep.
working,
Yep.
and also want to possibly be in less crowded kind of city center, town
Ap-
center kind of environments, there is an
Apartments.
uptake in moving out.
Yep.
And so I think we're going to see maybe at least within the M25 border, if not beyond, we're going to start seeing prices start going up because people will
Yep.
want to be moving out a little bit, want that more space, and they don't mind driving around as
I mean,
much.
I've seen a surge in demand right now for people going for houses rather than apartments.
Right.
The
Again, for
fact
garden
that
space, outdoor space.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, you know, if you have a family of four, for example, it's a couple and two kids. The kids cannot play in an apartment, right? They
Yeah.
need that outside space, especially because if you don't live close to a park or a garden or something like that, you need to have that outdoor space. And this is why people are, I mean, the amount of people that have also asked for rental, you know, in terms of
Hmm.
mansions, for example.
Yeah.
So the demand on that houses side is definitely, I think, going up. We've
I
got a
think so,
yeah,
yeah.
we've got a question here by the ordinary landlord. Do you buy an options agreement and then apply for planning, or outright without planning?
That's actually a really good question.
Go ahead.
Um, when I started, I feel like I almost had to buy outright. It was
Okay.
harder then. It's not that it's impossible. It was harder to negotiate an option style agreement, which tends to be a bit more complex, just because there was less credibility. Now we pretty much always have an option.
Okay.
Um, and there's twofold now. One, it does reduce our risk in that we are, being able to have time and we don't take the planning risk on as much.
Yep.
The second being because there is credibility now and more know-how with regards to what we want to achieve on sites, it's easier to secure that option agreement. So now it's say pretty much always without fail.
You go for
We'll
an
go
option
for the
agreement.
option. And it works. We try and structure so that it's a win-win. So the seller normally will tend to get a little bit more for their home or their piece of land for holding out for a little while. Um, and we, on the other side, will have reduced risk. So we try
Yep.
and structure them always that it's a good win-win for both parties.
18-month options or longer or
Depends on
shorter?
the complexity of the planning that we want to
Okay.
get. So normally 6 to 12 months at least, with a possible extension if, let's say, we were in an appeal or a scenario of that regard. So because we're quite realistic with the way that we do our planning. Um, we don't want, for example, we don't want to try and overdevelop a site knowing that it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yep.
We rather find a site with a reasonable scheme that we can do that we know is an easy to get planning for. Because at the end of the day, we want to buy, we want to build, sell, and move on.
Yep.
And having that process churning as a better upside if you can do more projects. So we will try and find sites that we know we can reasonably get a good outcome out of them. And the other thing is very important as well with the way to do the planning. So we always go for a pre-app and then a full application. And we find that having that two-step approach is very beneficial. Yes, it takes a little bit longer because you have to do a pre-app, but the pre-application gives you a written response back from the council telling you in principle what they do and do not accept or what they would like amended. And you almost then have feedback that you can implement into your full planning application, which in essence, you're kind of submitting an A-star paper, if that makes sense. You know what you're possibly going to get and you're submitting that.
I think the questions were asked by the ordinary landlord because I think he's got some sites in London,
Okay.
in and around London. So he
Okay.
said that he's going to be in touch with you about them.
Sure. Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. DM us.
good. This is a good platform for people to get in touch with stuff. It's good. Um, so now that you are a full-time property developer developing luxury homes in London, how are you adopting yourself and your company in this new norm that we're going through right now?
Yeah, I think, what we have done is we've kind of just been a lot more diligent um, with regard to the financials of our companies to make sure that we are spending wise, um, trying not to bulk. That's okay.
Mhm.
Working from home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Um,
I've got a 3-year-old, but yeah, it's all right.
oh, bless. So yeah, so I think that's been important. One of the things that we also did was we didn't stop on the construction side.
Okay.
Um,
Not
we
at all?
obviously not at all. We
Wow.
took on social distancing measures very quickly. The construction industry did give good guidance, so we were quick to follow and adapt. And so we did not stop. And therefore, as suppliers started opening up, we were geared up already to take advantage of that.
And
So I would
now
say
that, yeah. And
so
now that
now, for example, our
everything's
sites are very busy right now, whereas a
exactly.
lot of sites are still starting to start up again because they
Yeah.
slowed down a lot. So we didn't stop, and I think we kind of carried on going, uh, with obviously being as alert as
I mean,
possible and as
I
flexible
know a
as
few
possible.
developers that did not stop. You know, they
Hmm.
carried on with,
Yeah,
even let's say if there is, like, for example, the plasters, you just need the plasters on that particular day. Get
and the
them in,
supplies.
get the exactly,
Yeah.
get them in, get them out, get the electricians in, get them out and get the,
So
you
it's
know,
different, right? So for
yeah,
example, now like social distancing means we have to program construction totally differently.
Yep.
We have a site that we're building in Stanmore called Waterside Mansions, where we're building 3 detached houses.
Yep.
Now, these 3 houses kind of have the roofs done, which we're
Okay.
doing the internals now. And
Yep.
that's a great time to get multiple trades in because you can really multitask at that time.
Yep.
But we can't now because of social distancing. So we have a totally different program where, let's say, we'll give one house, to the electrician and one house to
One
the
house
plumber,
to. Yep.
and it's a
Yep.
total different way of multitasking. But we've just had to adapt because of the situation.
And it's a good thing, right? I mean, let's say if this carries on the way it is, and
Yeah.
social distancing becomes the norm, then you're well adopted to that. So I think a
Which
lot
it
of
will be, I
develop.
think, for the foreseeable future, it will be.
Do you think so?
Until we have a vaccine, I do think we will be doing some level of social distancing.
So I think developers who may be listening or who are going to listen to this, you should take this advice on board and adopt your team, your company structure in a way where if these rules keep on going the way they are, it doesn't hinder your
Yeah,
business and you can carry on and produce more
yeah.
and more homes the way you should be.
Yeah, I think also on an ethical level, though, right? I mean, you have to be able to show your subcontractors, the people, your partners that work with you, that you
Yep,
care about their healthcare.
absolutely.
So having,
Absolutely.
the correct, enough washing facilities, enough sanitizer stations, all that stuff you need to provide, even though it may cost you, because it shows that the importance of healthcare for the people that you work
Absolutely.
with.
Absolutely. And that's your team, right? That is
Yeah,
your team and you got to look after them.
your
Rutu,
family, end of the day.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Quick question. These people that you employ in your um, or contract in your company,
yeah.
do you normally get them on payroll or do you keep them totally separate as another company and they carry on the way it is?
So, I mean, to try and be more, I would say, keep our overheads low, we work with a lot of contractors, subcontractors
Okay.
that will come in for a specific job. We
Okay.
tend not to take on full-time um, trades. And I think the
Okay.
reason for that, if you're running a large operation where you have enough work for full-time trades, yes, that is a cheaper route,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
Taking people on a job by job basis means you may be paying more for that specific job, but you make it up in the downtime that you're not using them. So it keeps costs, I think, more controlled. I think it's tempting at the beginning to take more people on board as you start seeing success or start seeing
Yep.
things
Yep.
happening well. But just something to keep in mind.
Did you
Cash
ever
flow,
did you ever
overheads.
did you ever think that no, I think it's better that we get it on, like you just mentioned, that when you see that success and you start selling homes
Yeah,
and the cash flow is coming, did you ever
yeah.
think yourself that no, now it's the time to get some of these people on payroll or
To be honest, I thought it after the first project. I
seriously?
was like, yeah, we need to expand. This went well. What can we do next? And then I almost had to step back and reevaluate, which you have to do anyway,
Yeah,
but uh, got excited.
good stuff. Um, so we've got a question here. What's the
Sure.
typical land site values you deal with? I appreciate they vary, but an indication.
Sure. I think it's very difficult to look at a land for a pound value and say, oh, I only buy up to 500,000, I only buy up to 1 million. You have to look at it almost in a backward model, which is to see what can you get from that piece of land, and then what percentage should you be paying for land. So a good
So
if you can
start from the top basically.
top
That
and work back and do it in
okay.
a ratio format. So if you're picking up land for say 30-ish%, you're doing pretty well because you have enough room there for all the other costs to go in. I think what you find is as when the markets kind of pick up, which we saw, pre-COVID,
Yep.
and confidence in the market is there. UK having limited land, the land prices tend to go up very fast.
Yep.
And there'll be deals floating around where you'll be looking at 45, 50% plus your land value of your
Yep.
GDV value, your gross development value.
Indeed.
I would definitely recommend to be cautious on that one.
And if someone were to come in and produce that site to you, that you think that it's the right site, that and I can get the best possible development out of this. You've done all your workings.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to sort of let's say, selling the site, what sort of issues, selling the completed product, what sort of issues do you come across selling those properties?
To be honest, we don't get a lot. I think if you've designed your scheme well, and the only way to design it well is to know what your target audience is before you start designing. So if you're building for a family market, then you should design for a family market. And initially, it's always very key not to get emotionally attached. So not to build how you want to live, but to build how the trends are for that
Absolutely.
specific market, and to
That's
be very
where I
cautious
think a
of that.
lot of developers go wrong, because they
Yeah.
start thinking, they're in that mind frame, hold on a second.
Yeah, it's like I
If
love a
I can
pink
live
wall,
here,
but everybody may not love a pink wall. So, you
exactly,
really have to be cautious
absolutely.
with how you develop. So if you have the target market spot on in the beginning and you design for that target market, then it's pretty obvious that it will attract that market when you're at launch or selling.
What's your ideal development site?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Um, I personally love building homes where people can kind of make a life into, if that makes sense. A home that can grow with a family, a home that serves a purpose, that makes memories. And I think that's the satisfaction side of doing this. Many times, I think, when I'm in touch with buyers, say a year later or more, and to see that the home has, benefited their lives, made them
The
happier,
house
they've built
has
a
homed
family.
the
It's
family, kind of.
become, yes.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that for me is so satisfying. So if I could do more of that, yeah,
That's your ideal.
that's my ideal. Yeah.
And
Keeps
and
keeps things happy.
what's the development site you would run away from?
Oh gosh. I think something that was financially troublesome. I think that's my fear really. And with the market right now, everyone's on guard. So if you're buying too high or leveraging yourself too high, these are danger zones to look out for. So I'm definitely on caution for those. On caution
And
for
uh,
those.
and are you open to advising people when it comes to someone going ahead and buying their first development site, and they come up to you that, oh, Rutu, can you kind of advise me on this? Would you be open to that?
Of course, I would be honored. Yeah,
Super. That's good to
very
know.
honored. Yeah.
Um, we've got another question by the ordinary landlord. He's quite, productive out here. Do you have do you do many flatted developments?
Apartments, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
Yes,
I guess so.
we have done some schemes with apartments. I think pros and cons, whether you're doing housing or apartments. Apartments, the biggest pro is you tend to get a much higher density because you
Yep,
can kind of get more in.
yep.
You also find that on a resale, apartments will tend to sell for a higher pound per square foot. So there is
And plus, you
sometimes
make out
more
the service
financial.
charge and all that kind of stuff. The added advantage of
If
having an apartment.
So you'll have a service charge if they're rented. So
Yeah,
yes, there could be potential other income streams if you're
exactly.
renting them out. You
Yep,
can refinance them, keep them on. I mean, you can do that with a house too.
yep.
But I think with an apartment, you tend to get more intensification. So financially, it's normally more attractive. But then sometimes you find that with an apartment, you pay more for the land. So it may even itself
Balance
out.
itself out.
Yeah.
Exactly,
But if you're,
exactly.
for example, finding something where it doesn't have scope for apartments and you're putting apartments there, you're really seeing an upside. I mean,
Yep,
that's a win-win.
good stuff. And do you get more money from a landowner perspective? I don't know what's
I'm
that
not sure
meant
that
to be.
question. Could you
Could you
elaborate a little bit
elaborate?
more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please, ordinary landlord. It's good to have
Yeah, and
people,
thank you for the
coming
questions.
in.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the whole point of doing this. I mean, some people do get bored of me just asking questions, so it's good to have
Have
it's
some
good to have other
discussion.
people discussing, and it shows that we're adding value out here.
Yeah.
So now that we've covered all these points within your development sector and your business, let's say I'm a new, okay, let's take this on first. I meant I would get more money from my land if I used for flats.
Versus houses?
I'm
Um,
pretty
Probably,
sure, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
say if you were selling your land, and if you got planning permission on it for apartments and then sold your same piece of land, let's say you were able to get 3 apartments versus 3 houses, chances are that you may get more for your land, but also important to keep in mind in that area, wherever it is that you're building,
Yep.
one, what is more required, and therefore what will be more attractive to sell on. So if you're building um, apartments in an area that's probably not great for apartments, you probably won't get more for your land. So I would do a little bit of homework there. Speak to your local agents, look on Rightmove, just see what you can find, and then maybe run some scenarios on both and see which one is more profitable.
Quick question, Rutu. Do you also look at population growth when it comes to developing?
Yeah, definitely. I would look at population growth. Schools are very important. Again, if you're building for a family market, schools are key. Being able to commute is key, 'cause a lot of the times parents will be working.
I mean,
Uh,
where you develop in North London, Northwest London, they have some of the best schools in London.
yes,
You
so
know,
we're very
so
lucky with that regard.
yeah.
So we find there's a big attraction with families to come there. And we also find apartments as well. You have professionals who want to probably stay in the area. You
Yep.
have downsizers who love living in the area and may want to still stay there, but don't really want a
Mm,
house anymore. So
exactly.
there's a lot of different scope. And I think because in London in general, I think it's nice to see there's a lot of suburbs in London, and a lot of suburbs that tend to have the fundamentals of what makes good housing, having high streets, schools, shops, all of that stuff, train stations nearby. Um,
Convenience at the doorstep.
exactly. And that's what people are looking for end of the day,
Yeah.
which is why you're going to pay a little bit more to stay in a London suburb versus, let's say, out, out of the M25.
Um, I think we already covered this, but we'll discuss it again. What has been
Sure.
your main challenges when dealing with both councils and neighbors, and how did you manage to overcome them? Part of it
Yeah,
we discussed, part of it we didn't.
yeah,
So, but yeah,
yeah.
go
So
ahead.
I think, again, communication is important. Council, the pre-app is a great way to start that communication, because a lot of the time with a pre-app, they'll offer you a meeting. So if you can sit face to face with your counselor, who will probably be the one that will also take on the full
So you would always
application.
recommend a pre-app before you go in with the full-on application, so that you meet the
Um,
counselor and you
I think it
discuss with
depends.
them.
If you're doing something very little, that's easy, you don't need to bother. But
Okay.
ideally, if you want to do, let's like we do new builds or demolishing, trying to add multiple units or something,
Y-
it's very beneficial.
Okay.
And to sit face to face, I think as well with a counselor, to be able to ask any question you want with them, it makes that communication easier to flow. So when
Yep.
it comes to submitting, we find that we already have a little bit of a rapport with them. Sometimes we can ask questions if we need to. So that's key. The thing with neighbors, again, I would say introduce yourself early,
Make friends.
uh, make friends, and really just be sympathetic for whatever requirements they may have. For example, no neighbor wants to be living next to a building site that's banging at 10 p.m. at night.
Yeah.
So you've got to be sympathetic with them, and I feel like if you are, then a lot of the times the neighbors are, if
But
anything, they
you
want the build to be
but
done
they
quicker as
have,
well.
yeah, but they have laws over here, right? Which
They
are
do,
like
yeah,
what, 8 to 4, right? Or
yeah,
9 to 5,
and half days
something.
on Saturdays, yeah.
Exactly. Um, what has been the hardest sale in any of your developments so far that you've done over the 10 years? Hardest purchaser or the problematic sale for you?
I think it's just kind of trying to sell a property and the timing of it. I think the last few years we've had our fair shares of ups and downs. We had Brexit,
Yep.
which probably knocked a lot of the market out, because I think a lot of the business community was expecting that we would stay with the EU.
Yep.
So that changed the fundamentals, and I think that caused a lot of buyers to step back. So there was this
Yep.
constant correction happening, and the uncertainty of not knowing when Brexit will finish, when can we, move on with our lives. And I feel like we were so pleased when we got that towards the end of last year, and we had 2 months of fabulous optimism.
And then we came
And
back into
now
the
again, so I
when
think
scenario again.
exactly. So I think we've had a couple years of a lot of uncertainty.
Yep.
I mean, I'm quite a positive person, so I think this just means we have a lot more pent-up demand, and we saw it very clearly, in January, for example,
Absolutely.
February,
Big time.
huge surge, and they saw,
Yep.
the highest price increases again in
I
the
mean,
UK.
me as an agent, 2018. I mean, I've been in the business for 12 years now, and since I started in 2011 to 2017, was okay. You know, I was doing
Hmm.
deals here and there. But 2018 then took a drastic change where I
Yeah.
went and did 18 sales in 2018. And I was like, wow, you know,
Yeah.
if I capture on this, I
Hmm.
mean, 2019, I may be able to do 36 sales. But
Yeah.
little did I know that
Yeah.
2019 is going to turn up and I'll just bring that 18 to 6
Yeah.
instead of taking it to 36. You know, it was crazy. And then when 2020 happened, like just as we were getting out of Brexit, elections happened, perfect timing, you know, inquiries started coming in. December, I did my first sale. I was like, perfect, good. This is going to be a good year. January, the inquiry started booming.
Yeah.
Did another sale. I was like, okay, perfect, amazing. And then
Yeah.
February, March,
But
April.
I think it
But
just shows us, that we have to be prepared. And it's
absolutely.
so easy in the good times to forget what's happened.
Yep.
And I think that's a mistake we all make. It's human nature to forget the difficult times and the good times.
We always like to live in the good times, right?
Of course, who wouldn't?
Um, so like I was saying, one final piece of advice that you would give a property entrepreneur
Yeah.
who wants to get onto developing, what would you advise them of how to go about it?
Yeah, I think my key advice would always be is to do your research. The property market is a risky market to enter into, but if you're doing making educated assumptions, talking to the right people, researching, you're able to limit those risks. So I think always do your research, number one. Number two, don't rush. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instinct. Don't go for it. There'll always be another deal around the corner.
And you mentioned that when you started property development, you went in with all your cash. Everyone does not have that opportunity. And when they go to the banks or they go to development finance and all that kind of stuff, credibility, experience, all that kind of stuff matters and they don't get it. What would you recommend someone who does not have the cash to go in and who does not have the banks to support them? How would you sort of, and yet they have the aspiration that yet they want to
Hmm.
get onto the property ladder, they want to start developing. How
Yeah.
would you advise that particular person of going about doing their first project?
Yep, I think the common misconception, and I think it's very, very widely thought that you need a lot of cash to do property development. And I don't think so. And I think, end of the day, funds can be raised. It's all about deal structuring. I mean, doing deals with no money down is very common in the
Yep,
property sector. It's
yep,
how much of that return are you giving away?
gotcha.
So let's say you are starting out and your key is to learn, give away more of your return.
So
Be
you would
there.
recommend doing a JV with
Oh
with
yeah,
a
because you're
with,
almost getting to learn on someone else's dime. You're
okay.
getting experience, which is invaluable. And once you have experience, you can now start, um, you know, earning more from your deals, for example. So it has to be a long-term game. This is not a quick rich get quick rich
Yeah,
on one development kind of scheme. I
yep,
mean,
yep.
it's not a sustainable way,
So
I
even
think,
if
to do that.
even if you have to give, let's say, what, maybe 30, 70% of your profit,
I would.
80% of your,
Yeah, I would.
you would
On
go
my
ahead and do
first
that.
deal, if I was really keen about learning, that's what I would do. To be honest, my first deal was a similar kind of structure. I gave away a lot of it,
So
but
you did a JV with someone to
I
raise
did.
that
Yeah,
capital
I did.
to
Yes.
and then you sort of use their name at the back of it to get that credibility in the market, you know.
It totally depends, right? I mean,
Yeah,
end of the day, you may have a silent investor, you may have a more active investor, somebody may want to be very involved. But, like I said, if there's a good deal and you've done your research and the numbers stack up well, it's easier to then find a partner who's willing to join forces with you. So buying right is the most important.
that's great. That is some amazing advice and great. You know, it's always good to have different sectors of property coming here and talking about their experiences, their life, their hardships that they have faced, how they've gone through with property development over the
Hmm.
years. You know, it's good to share all that knowledge. And I'm sure a lot of people who tuned in today must have had great insight on how Rutu from Amara Properties has taken her journey from being an investment banker to being a full seasoned property developer. Um, So thank you so much for
No,
turning up,
thank you so much for
joining
having
me on
me.
my
It's been a
live
pleasure.
session. It's great to discuss this. I've got your property brochures ready, which I'm going to send over to you in a minute,
Lovely.
and you can go through them and just give me the
Sounds
go ahead.
good.
Anything else you want to say? Any final words that you may have for people who are listening to right now?
Yeah, I think, we're in a little bit of a negative style scenario right now. I think it's important to take the positives from it, and to remember, like with every disruption, there is opportunity. So it's a time to hustle.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. On that note, we'll have this live session ended, and I'll possibly ping you again to do this one more time,
Sure, no problem.
just to possibly discuss a different aspect in property development and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for joining
You're
me
very
today,
welcome.
Rutu.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Uh, So that was Rutu from Amara Properties that joined in today discussing various aspects on property development, how they started their journey and where they are today. It's been great chatting to a lot of entrepreneurs, property developers, property investors, property agents, different markets, different way of dealing with the property sector before COVID, in COVID, post COVID, how they're going to deal with stuff. So it's been great chatting to a lot of people about this. So thank you so much to all the viewers that tuned in. It's been great having you here. Ordinary Landlord, thank you so much for asking those questions. It's always great to have people's views on these live streams so that the conversation gets more interesting. So thank you so much to all. See you soon. Got a live session with a business coach at 6 p.m. Do tune in. That's London time, 6 p.m. Take care. Have a good Tuesday ahead. Bye bye.